The Battle of Culloden finally saw an end to the long-standing power struggle between two British monarchs. The defeat of Prince Charles Edward Stuart's Jacobite army and the consolidation of power to the Hanoverian throne had repercussions not only for these islands but around the world, as historians and academics have detailed in tome after tome. Nevertheless, 275 years later, the Battle of Culloden continues to fascinate, prompt debate and division, and attract visitors in their droves from far and wide. Culloden Moor is stewarded by the National Trust for Scotland, whose team of archaeologists are as curious as the public to piece together what really happened on that day. New excavations are taking place on the site now, with volunteers scouring the topsoil looking for artefacts from the battle.
So what we're doing here is we're doing a series of test pits on an area archaeological excavation behind the government's second line of deployment. We're wanting to understand what the archaeological evidence for sort of periphery of the battle is, because we want to understand the entirety of the battle. So not just about where the troops and the combat took place, but where they moved through. But one of the things we're not sure about is what happens after the battle. Where maybe some of the battalions of government troops stayed on the battlefield for a bit longer, and there may have been a camp here. So we're looking for anything that relates to archaeology of the battle, but in fact we're looking for prehistoric stuff as well and any other evidence. We were slightly disappointed to start with when we were hoping to get lots and lots of musket balls, but because we're so far back, I mean, we've got to imagine that the front line of the government troops are taking most of the impact of the Jacobite fire, so not many shots will be getting through. What we're looking for here is things that are arching over, coming underneath, and sometimes just missing everybody and making their, and being deposited out here. Now, we don't know the concentration of that at all, so this is why we're here. So far, one musket ball this morning is great news because we were getting a bit worried, but we're also looking for all the other objects and metal artefacts, so buckles and horseshoes and things like that, and then we'll get those looked at by specialists who'll be able to tell us roughly what sort of date those are and whether any of those relate to the battle or not. The good thing, because it's been used as an agricultural ground, it's been ploughed again and again and again. All the objects are mixed up in the topsoil. So we're not really looking for things that are lying in the exact position. They've probably been moved around a bit. So what we do is we can quite quickly dig holes down through that, and we can sieve the soil, not on a day like this, but we can sieve the soil and pull the artefacts out, and that's why we'll get a real mix of things. It's been organised by the National Trust for Scotland, so our archaeology team is here. Our archaeological volunteers are here, so there's about 10 of those. And we also are working very closely with the estate team at Culloden Battlefield Visitor Centre. And it was partly a training exercise, but it's also, we wanted to make use of it and to evaluate this piece of ground which hadn't ever been looked at before.
I've probably grovelled about in about 4 or 5, but what I've mostly been doing is teaching people how to use a trench, use the tools safely, and how to look for things. I found some bits of pot. I did find in one trench 2 bits of pot, but I found it just as I put the mattock through one of the pieces, so I ended up with 4 bits of pot. But that happens, unfortunately. Today is the bad day. We have been very, very lucky with the weather. Absolutely fabulous weather up until today. I think it's wonderful. I'm nosy by nature, I love history, I'm crazy about archaeology, so being in such an iconic spot is just fabulous. And the guys at the centre have been so nice to us, and the public have been so interested. It's perfect.
Most of them, my regular volunteers, are ones who've come on over the years on what was our working holidays, which used to be called thistle camps, and they would come away for a week at a time. And we're doing this in a similar sort of model. And they've come along, they're from all over Scotland basically, and we're living close by in a series of 3 different houses for COVID reasons. They're all different backgrounds, but most of them came having done no archaeology to start with, and some of them have been coming back for up to 15 years. So they're all very good archaeologists now. So it's great because people get, and it's It's good to see the volunteers from the visitor centre this week. That's exactly the same thing. Some of them are really enthusiastic and have been getting quite excited about the find, so it's a nice way to work. What I always like about this sort of thing is that it involves people. So the Trust's main aims are to protect, to promote and to provide experiences. And that we're doing all that. Protection comes through understanding. So we are evaluating what the archaeological concentration of materials in this field is. And it definitely will be doing it again because there's lots and lots of ground. You can see just how small an area we're looking at here. But in the future, you can multiply that up and you can maybe get members of the public in, and we can bring in, we'll also be working hopefully in the future with the Centre for Battlefield Archaeology at Glasgow University, and doing bits of targeted research work in the future as well.
The artefacts recovered by the team on the battlefield are then taken to the nearby Culloden Centre, where experts continue to analyse them to discover whether they are from the battle, and if so, what role they might have played.
We're working kind of around the dates of the battle, thinking about things that would be directly associated on the day, but we're also, like all archaeology in Scotland, we're finding things that predate the battle and things that come after the battle. For example, we've got some prehistoric remains, we've got some burnt cremated bone, looks like animal bone, and then we've got some flint as well, used for making tools. So again, that predates the battle by a couple of thousand years. And then thinking about where we are on the battlefield and the movement of the government troops specifically, we're thinking about the cavalry movements, and we've got horseshoes which have been turning up, and then we've just found today this musket ball, and this has an impact mark on it as well, so we do know that this has been fired, which is really exciting, because it gives us a line of trajectory from the battle itself. There's what look like quite personal items as well. We've got this beautiful button with inlaid glass on there as well. So again, we can compare it to other collections. We can start thinking about looking at costume collections and see, when this might have been from, whether it's too fancy for uniform, or maybe not. So we'll work on that, and we'll see if we can pin down a date and a use for that. Later again, after the battle, one of the things that we're really interested in is the actual land use, because some of the written accounts of the battle talk about the government moving across ploughed land or moving through bog and things like that. So if our excavation is actually showing up things like this is a piece of plough, so we've got plough marks in the field as well. So we're thinking, okay, so we're now in a ploughed field. If we can see that that's contemporary with the battle, we can then line up the written accounts of the troops' movement with exactly where we're excavating outside. One of the things we'll be doing is taking a lot of these metal artifacts and x-raying them. This looks like it might be some kind of pin, which again might be associated with some of the mortars or some of the hardware that was used in the battle. And this piece looks like it's probably a knife blade as well. So once that's x-rayed and we can actually see the shape and the form within there, we can take a look at some of the collections and the literature and see if we can match that up as well with the battle. These places have been used, for thousands of years, right through to more recently. So again, it's sifting through all of this. Our volunteers have been absolutely fantastic and nothing gets missed. So we've got things that are relatively modern, 19th, early 20th century, and we'll sort this, we'll date it all, we'll come up with the chronology, and then we'll be able to properly define what it is that we found. The battle itself, although it was quite a short confrontation, you've got a lot of people moving around the landscape prior to the battle and after the battle. There's as the second line, we think we're excavating at the second line of government troops. They would have been marching in, milling around, getting ready, separating into different areas. So there's a lot of movement and there's a lot of opportunity to find things that might have been dropped as they're organising before going into battle. And then after the battle, if casualties are being pulled away from the battle site and they're being looked after in clusters around the edge of the battle site. We're interested in trying to define what happened afterwards as well. It's one of these ongoing projects. We do a little bit at a time. Our work at the National Trust for Scotland is to look after Culloden forever, so we'll never stop looking. And every year we'll add a little new piece to the jigsaw, just to get that story more and more well defined as the years go on.